Sometimes, instead of a note or a book, she left him a picture, either on the table or stuck above the hearth. She was good at art, and might have drawn and painted him an abode as complex and intriguing as the castles and palaces on hilltops in the background of Renaissance paintings, delightful winding roads that climbed to safety on snow or blue sky, distracting the mind from the foreground martyrdoms, allowing it rest and peace. But all she ever did for him, knowing his mind and his desires, was the place of their shared invention, each time with some alteration that she knew he would notice and trusted he would approve. A rowan by the front door instead of a hawthorn, harebells in the window, not heather. Once she added a small knoll to one side and a little forward of the shieling, on land they thought of as theirs, and laid steps up it so they would have a vantage point. He was glad of that, and wondered how they had ever managed without. From that invented hillock, in warm weather, either might watch for the other coming, she explained. Such a clear view they had down the long valley, and there she stood, or he stood, watching for the friend. How slow the approach was, how long a time elapsed between the first sighting and the first embrace. But that interlude, though the feelings lifted as the climber inch by inch drew near, that long space of time had no anxiety in it, not the least. It was all sureness, confidence, step by step, minute by minute, becoming ever more precisely flesh and blood and bone, a confirmed familiarity, the person as trustworthy as the place itself. And there again, she said, looking at me very closely to be sure I had understood, in that too the virtue of our invention was proven. I was helped alone, and I was helped when I thought of myself and our vantage point, watching his slow arrival. When they were together in the shieling, only ever for 2 or 3 days at the very most, then of course they made love. But when she told me this, she said how much she, and he too for that matter, preferred to say, "We slept together." She was pedantically anxious that I should understand her in this, and that I should not deduce anything false out of her distinctions. I understood that she wanted me to know that the pleasure they had given one another, the love they had made, was intense, and her body and soul would never forget it. But I also understood that in the whole invention, their thinking and dreaming of sleeping together had even greater virtue, was even better able to help. That was what she dwelled on in her dejections, and what she urged him to dwell on in his constant anxiety and restlessness. She said to him, "I am someone you can go to sleep with, and if you wake in the night you will hear me breathing quietly in my sleep. Think of that. Your hand will be on my breast. You will feel how contented my heart is. Dwell on that." There was more, much more. You must remember that their shieling was an invented place, and an invention, even one confined to simplicity, austerity, necessity, might be elaborated forever by two people who have a vital interest in it. She spoke of the deep contentment there was in sitting face to face at the table, writing. How one looked up for a word and with a shock saw the other likewise listening and waiting. And this happened alone in the place, she said, as often and as easily as when they thought or dreamed themselves there together. Then the subject took hold of her. The words came tumbling forth from her like the stream they had to climb to reach the shieling of their invention. More and more she found to say, and how I encouraged her, on the subject of a place so simple, so bare in its appointment and decoration, so frugal in its amenities. All her girlhood awoke in her when she told me what was there, what might have been there, how free they were, within the strict forms laid on their desires, to add and subtract, to change and to innovate, and all their doing, saying, sleeping and dreaming in that place. I felt it binding me to her as her listener forever. For example, she said, there was a window at the back of the house. Through it we could see the stony ground, the screes either side, the lingering snow, the gap, the col, the windy exit from our valley over into the next. Their place reminded me of many places, needless to say. I located it easily in 3 or 4 different lands, felt I had been there, felt I might go there again. But on the one occasion when I asked her would she name the place, her looks froze against me, as against an indecency. I blushed in shame. I begged her forgiveness. After a while she forgave me by resuming her voice. Forgiveness was a part of the play, she said. Forgive and forget might have been an inscription over our door. I believe it was for a while. We imagined several and swapped them. My favourite was, let be. I don't like forgetting. I like to think we could remember and forgive. But I especially love the words, let be. The gesture of the shieling was that. Therein lay its great good. I mean, she said, the hand raised in greeting, open to show peace and welcome, but also because of who we were, because of what we were like. It was the hand and the fingers that will be raised and extended to touch the lips of the friend when he or she is full of doubt and fear, and the words better never said, not needing to be said, are rushing into utterance, and the hand very gently stops them. There is no need. Let be. I think she could see that my indecent asking after a name for the place still grieved me, because of her own accord she added something more and other than I had asked for. Once I did come to such a place, she said, by accident really, by folly and passive drifting and failure to watch my step. I was with somebody who was very fond of me, and I liked him well enough, or I should never have been there with him, I suppose. We were walking. It was his idea. He said he knew a place he was sure I would like. It would lift my spirits, he said. I doubted it. I very much doubted it, but I had no energy in me to say no. I had lost the cure of my own soul. We were climbing and came out of a forest, and quite suddenly, I had not paid attention, there was a wide valley stretching away and above us, narrowing to a col. I seemed to be dreaming. I let myself trek in a dream by waterfalls and by rowan trees, a long, long climb in silence, like the wraith of myself, following a man I liked well enough and who I knew was very fond of me. She paused. She looked at me with more trouble in her face than I could bear to witness. I put up my hand. I extended my fingers gently, gently to stop her voice. Then she shrugged and said, I'm sure you can guess the rest. We came to the ruins of a shieling. The stones of it were tumbled down and all around. It was a shieling at the very limit of tractable land where the bare rock began. How I wept to see it. I turned away. I left him standing there in his poor ignorance. I made back down the valley on my own. I was inconsolable. Still am, in fact.